Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to be doing an overview. Oh, great. Did I unplug the wrong one? I think I unplugged the wrong one back there. There's only so many outlets back there, and I think I unplugged the one that controls the microphones. I'll take care of that in a moment. Right now, we're going to be talking about the book of Proverbs tonight. And again, I've got this video. I'll take care of it, Mark. Anybody not get one of these? You didn't get one? Okay. Here's one. You have one that Levi ripped up a little bit. All right. We'll watch this 8-minute video. I think it does a fantastic job talking about the book of Proverbs, what it is, what it isn't. That, again, we're going just an overview of all of the wisdom literature, just doing one book at a time. The book of Proverbs is an incredibly helpful book with, if you just went verse by verse through the whole book, it would be very difficult to find any rhyme or reason to the book after chapter 9. The first 9 chapters you can read just in a sitting, and it makes sense the order that it presents everything as. But chapters 10 through 29 is just a random collection of sayings, is what it seems like. And we're going to notice what those are there for. So, among all of the books of the wisdom literature, you have Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. They all have a different purpose for them that we noticed 2 weeks ago. Psalms is a collection of songs, and there is an order to them that is very deliberate. They're not necessarily chronological, but they have purpose for the way that they are ordered. There are songs that are lament songs that are sad about the destruction and God punishing, and things are happening in the world that you don't understand. There's songs of praise. There are songs of history. The book of Songs is a collection of songs. Proverbs is a collection of sayings that help you achieve a better life. They are not 100% guaranteed in every circumstance. But if you follow the wisdom that's given in Proverbs, you in general will have a far better life than someone who doesn't listen to the wisdom of the book of Proverbs. So we're going to watch through this video here.
The book of Proverbs.
And it's...
The word proverb typically refers to a short, clever sentence that offers some kind of wisdom. And this book has a lot.
It was working great just a little while ago.
End of 29.
There we go.
But there is way more going on in the book of Proverbs, especially at the beginning, chapters 1 through 9, and the conclusion, chapters 30
I think we're
through
good.
31. The book's been designed with an introduction, chapter 1, verses 1 through 9, and it first of all links this book to King Solomon. Now remember the story in 1 Kings chapter 3. Solomon had asked God for wisdom to lead Israel well, and so Solomon became known as the wisest man in the ancient world. And we're told in 1 Kings chapter 4 that he wrote thousands of proverbs and poems and collected knowledge about plants and animals. So Solomon was like the fountainhead of Israel's wisdom literature. So while not all the material in this book is written by him personally, he is where Israel's wisdom traditions began. The introduction says that by reading this book, you too can gain wisdom. Now wisdom for most of us means knowledge. But the Hebrew word chokhmah means much more than just mental activity. It refers to action also. So think skill or applied knowledge. This is why back in the book of Exodus, chapter 31, it was artists and craftsmen in Israel who were said to have chokhmah. So the purpose of this book is to help you develop a set of practical skills for living well in God's world. And this gets linked with another key idea in the introduction, the fear of the Lord. Now, fear here is not about terror. It's about a healthy sense of reverence and awe for God and about my place in the universe. It's a moral mindset that recognizes I am not God and that I don't get to make up my own definitions of good and evil and right and wrong. Rather, I need to humble myself before God and embrace God's definition of right and wrong, even when that's inconvenient for me. Now, this introduction leads us into the first main section of the book, chapters 1 through 9, which also doesn't contain short one-liner proverbs. Rather, what we find here are 10 speeches from a father to a son about how the son should listen to wisdom and cultivate the fear of the Lord and live accordingly, which means a life of virtue and integrity and generosity, all of which lead to success and peace. The father warns his son also about folly and evil and stupid decisions that will breed selfishness and pride, all leading to ruin and shame. And so the son should make the pursuit of wisdom and the fear of the Lord his highest goal in life. And this way of thinking, it forms the moral logic of this entire book. Now, these speeches from the father also clue us into what biblical wisdom literature is and how it's different from other parts of the Bible. These books explore how to live well in God's world, but wisdom is not the same as law, like what Moses gave Israel at Mount Sinai. And it's not the same as prophecy, divine speech to God's people. Rather, wisdom literature has the accumulated insight of God's people through the generations about how to live in a way that honors God and others. And so, through the book of Proverbs, now, these human words about wisdom have been put together as God's word and wisdom to his people, which connects to the other thing you find in chapters 1 through 9. There are 4 poems from Lady Wisdom. Here, wisdom has been poetically personified as a woman who calls out to humanity to pay attention and to seek her. Wisdom says that she is woven into the fabric of the universe, and so wherever you see people making wise decisions, they are relying on her. So you see someone being generous, or having sexual integrity, or upholding justice. They are drawing on wisdom. These Lady Wisdom poems, they're a creative, poetic way of exploring this idea that we live in God's moral universe, and that goodness and justice are objective realities that we ignore to our own peril. And so fearing the Lord, living wisely, it's living along the grain of the universe. Now together, these 2 sets of speeches from the Father and Lady Wisdom, they make a powerful claim about this book, that you're not simply reading good advice, you're reading God's own invitation to learn wisdom from previous generations. And so in the next section of the book, chapters 10 through 29, we find hundreds of ancient proverbs, and they apply wisdom and the fear of the Lord to every life topic you could imagine: family, work, neighborhood, friendship, sex, marriage, money, anger, forgiveness, alcohol, debt, everything. And these are all filtered through the value system of Proverbs 1 through 9. Now these proverbs, they're all pretty short, they're easy to memorize, and actually this section of the book is meant to become a reference work that you return to time and time again throughout the year, which raises some important issues in learning how to read these proverbs. First of all, proverbs are by nature about probabilities. So if you fear the Lord and you make wise, good choices, things will likely go well for you. And if you don't fear the Lord, you're foolish, your life will likely not go so well. Now, that is all often true, but not always. Which leads to the next point, that proverbs are not promises. They're not formulas for success. So, some proverbs, for example: the fear of the Lord prolongs your life, but the years of the wicked are cut short. Or, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't turn from it. So yes, fearing God, being a moral person, will most likely lead to a better, longer life, and raising your kids in a stable, loving home does set them up well, but there are no guarantees. Lots of things can and often do go wrong in our world. And so lastly, Proverbs by nature focus on the general rule, but not the exceptions, which are many. And the wisdom books actually aren't ignorant of that. The exceptions are what the other wisdom books, Job and Ecclesiastes, are all about. And together, these acknowledge that life is too complex for simple formulas, which is why we need all of the wisdom books together to get the bigger picture. This all leads to the final section of the book, 2 large collections of poems. First, poems from a man named Agur, who begins by acknowledging his own ignorance and folly and his great need for God's wisdom. And then Agur discovers that divine wisdom has been given to him in the scriptures, which teach him how to live well. And so Agur is put before us as like a model reader of the book of Proverbs, somebody who's always open to hearing God's wisdom through the scriptures. The final poems are connected to a man named Lemuel. He's a non-Israelite king. And he passes on the wisdom that was given to him by his mom. It's guidance for being a wise and just leader. And then the final poem is an acrostic or an alphabet poem where each line begins with a new letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the entire poem's about the woman of noble character. It depicts a woman who lives according to the wisdom of Proverbs and stands like a model of someone who takes God's wisdom and then translates it into practical decisions in everyday life, at work or at home, in her family and in her community. So the book opened with words from a father to a son about listening to Lady Wisdom, and so now the book closes by offering the words of a mother to her son about a woman who lives wisely. The book of Proverbs is for every person in every season of life. It's a guide for living wisely and well in God's good world. And that's what the book of Proverbs is all about.
All right. And we will take a look at Proverbs, or Job another time. So, the book of Proverbs, do you find that video helpful? Kind of as an overview, how Proverbs begins with talking about wisdom personified as this woman, and the woman is available. She's crying out in the streets, saying, "Come and learn from me." She's ready. Like, you can find her if you're looking for her. But what's the problem with the world when it comes to wisdom? Is it because they can't find it? Because it's not available? No. It's right there, but instead, they're busy not looking for wisdom. And you see the general truth of what comes from ignoring Lady Wisdom. And the book ends with this worthy woman text of what she does and how people praise her for what she does because she follows the wisdom of the book of Proverbs. Aha, it's working now. So, I did pass out some questions and emailed those out last week. A couple of weeks ago. I meant to print out more of them tonight. I have one faded copy, if anybody wants a copy of these questions, but they're fairly simple. What I want to do is to look through some of these things. When the first question that we had in here, what period of Israel history were the Proverbs written? So who is said to have written many or most of the Proverbs? Solomon. So what period of Israel's history is that? We have those time periods. When was Solomon was what? What job did he have?
King.
Yeah, he was king. Was he king over a divided nation or of a united nation? Yeah, so he's under the United Kingdom. It's going to be his son, Rehoboam, that's going to cause the division of the northern tribes of Israel and the southern tribes of Judah. So Solomon is the golden era of the United Kingdom of Israel. The border is going to be the biggest that it will ever be under his reign, and he was a very wise person. What made him so wise? God did. Why did God make him wise?
He asked for wisdom.
Because he asked for it. And we're told that Solomon, he knew a lot, studied nature, he studied history, he studied botany, and he just had lots of wisdom because he asked God for wisdom, and God granted it to him. And he also granted him all the other stuff that he could have asked for too. Incredibly rich and could really do anything that he wanted. So the book of Proverbs is a collection of a lot of the truths, the general truths that Solomon accrued throughout his life. He also writes Ecclesiastes, which is the book that says all of this pursuit, all of the pursuit for wisdom, all of the pursuit for money and building stuff and all of the stuff ultimately means nothing. There's the only one thing that actually does matter, and that's fearing God and keeping his commandments. That's how the book of Ecclesiastes ends. I want you to notice how the book of Proverbs begins. We're going to be looking a lot at the first chapter tonight, but Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7 is a humongous theme of the book of Proverbs. Who's got Proverbs chapter 1 open right now? You want to read chapter 1, verse 7?
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction.
All right. So when we're talking about wisdom throughout this entire book, where does wisdom really reside? Is fearing the Lord. It mentioned it here. What does it mean to fear the Lord in the context of the book of Proverbs?
To revere him.
Revere?
Recognize him as all powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, humbling yourself, seeing yourself as being very low and seeing that you have a great need for what he has to offer. He is the source of wisdom. So to fear the Lord as the beginning of wisdom is to recognize who God is and who you are in compared to God. That I need the wisdom from above to understand what God wants from me. There are 3 passages here in question number 2 that ask what are some similarities and differences between them. So I'm going to ask Lee to go to Exodus 20, verse 14. Whitney, can you read Proverbs 6:32? And then, Wade, do you mind reading Jeremiah 5, verse 7 through 9? Jeremiah 5, 7 through 9. So all of these verses have the exact same topic, but they are given from a different perspective. So first is Exodus 20:14, then Proverbs 6:32, and then Jeremiah 5, 7 through 9. So whenever you're ready, Lee.
Do not commit adultery.
Pretty simple, right? All right, so what does Proverbs 6:32 say?
The one who commits adultery lacks sense. Whoever does so destroys himself.
All right, and then Jeremiah 5.
Why should I forgive you? Your children have abandoned me and sworn by those who are not gods. I satisfied their needs, yet they committed adultery. They gashed themselves at the prostitute's house. They are well-fed, eager stallions, each neighboring after someone else's wife.
All right, do you see the common thread between all of them, right? So what is Exodus chapter 20, verse 14? What is that chapter about?
The actual commandment against adultery.
Yeah, so Exodus 20 is the 10 Commandments chapter. So you have the command against adultery. Proverbs 6, what is it giving here? Is it a command?
It's more of a warning.
Yeah, it's a warning, a general advice. Here's what happens to you if you commit adultery. Here is the natural outcome. Now, Jeremiah, you remember when Jeremiah lives? He's at the very end of the divided kingdom and lives during the first stages of going into captivity. He really lives in the captivity and is prophesying. Why is God punishing the nation of Israel? One of the reasons he gives is you guys have been committing adultery. So what is Jeremiah's point when it comes to adultery?
Outcome of sin.
The outcome of sin. So do you see how each of these passages can be helpful? What can I learn right now as a guy who's been married for 11 years? I'm not in the early lovey-dovey, newlywed phase. And I'm not in the seasoned, been married 50 years. How could I do anything but stay faithful at this point? I'm I might be in the ripe age for this type of stuff, right? Why would Exodus be helpful to me?
That
Telling
is
you
a
what to do.
command from God.
Yeah, this is God's expectation for me. What is the benefit of Proverbs?
It's a warning.
It's a warning. Here's the type of life you're going to have if you go down this road. And Jeremiah, I can look at past people's mistakes and see what happened to them, knowing that I don't want to go down that road, right? So the entire Word of God is helpful when it comes to adultery, both the command, the advice, and looking at other people's mistakes and why they were punished for those. I've got two more in passages I want to read. In Jeremiah 18, verse 18, and Ezekiel 7:26. Those are the next on the list. Mark, you want to do Jeremiah 18:18, and Mr. Doug, Ezekiel 7:26? There are three different types of messengers that God uses to deliver his message in these two passages. So Jeremiah 18, verse 18, and then Ezekiel 7.
Then they said, Come, let us against Jeremiah, for the law shall not perish from the priest, nor counsel from the wise, nor the word from the prophet. Come, let us strike him with the tongue, and let us not pay attention to any of his words.
All right, so who are the three types of people in Jeremiah 18, verse 18? Priest,
and prophets.
the wise counsel, and prophets. All right, read Ezekiel 7, verse 26.
Calamity upon the calamity will come, and rumor upon rumor. They will go searching for a vision from the prophet. Priestly instruction in the law will cease. The counsel of the elders will come to an end.
All right, so who three people do you see there?
The prophets and the council.
Okay, so prophets, the wise counsel, and then you have instructions from the priests. And what do the priests tell you about? What are the priests' jobs? Their job is to tell you about the law, right? So, like we were talking about Exodus, the priest tells you the law. The prophets tell you, here's why you're being punished. Prophets never come during good times. Prophets only come to tell you, hey guys, you're doing bad, you need to straighten up before punishment comes. Or here's why you're being punished. Prophets never come during good times. It's always during times of sin that the prophets come. But that third group, who are they? They're the wise counsel of the elders. What would that look like? Be like going to your grandpa, sitting down, and him telling you, you always need to tell the truth. And when you shake somebody's hand, that's as good as signing a contract. What does that type of advice sound like? Those are all things out of the book of Proverbs, right? So what we're studying from the book of Proverbs is this general advice that helps you to have a good life. We'll talk about some of those exceptions, like the ones that he put on the screen there. Like, train a child in the way that they should go, and when he grows old, he will not depart from it. How true is that statement? Is it 100% true?
No.
No, but is it more true than not?
Generally.
Yeah, it's a general truth. Fathers, if you work on training your kids, they are far more likely to turn out to be respectful and respectable people when they grow up than if you don't. Can there be good kids that come out of absolute horrible family situations? Yes, but is that likely? No. Like, here's the general truth. It's not 100%. Proverbs aren't promises, but they are general rules for life. So that is what wisdom gives you. Or, if you obey your parents, you will live long in the land. You'll have a long and healthy life if you listen to your mom's advice and the instructions of your father. That comes at the end of chapter 1 and in chapter 2, that if you listen to your parents, you'll be more prosperous and live a long time. Is that 100% true? No. In fact, I got a text message just a little while ago. The kid that we were talking about last week, JJ, his doctor is in the Bible study group that I go to on Friday. He had to go into emergency surgery like just a few hours ago, and it's very much not looking good. Like it's very, very dire. And he's 13. Like, is it a general truth that if you train your kids well, that they'll grow up and live longer than if you don't? It's a general truth, but it's not a promise. Those exceptions are going to come in Ecclesiastes and especially the book of Job. What do you have in the book of Job is a man who lives upright, but every bad thing that could possibly happen to him happens to him, short of him dying. So like that's what those books are going to be helpful with. But Proverbs is general rules to help you live a wise life. So
To better understand that, put the two letters if before the proverb. If you do this, that will happen.
and generally, yeah, these are what should happen if you follow wisdom's advice. So the organization of the book of Proverbs, like he talked about, chapters 1 through 9 are a collection of speeches from a father to his son. Whether this is things that Solomon actually told Rehoboam. Solomon had lots of kids, not just Rehoboam, but I mean, he had 700 wives, 300 concubines. He had lots of kids. So here's some general advice from a father to his son. And chapters 1 through 9, there are some incredibly good, rich stuff out of these first 9 chapters and should be studied just in order like a class, chapters 1 through 9. When you get to chapter 10, though, my favorite way to study the Proverbs then is by category. Is you take all of the Proverbs about money and you stick them all together and you study them all in one sitting. You take all of the ones about relationships and you put them together, about friendships and the benefits of friendships and stuff like that. I like studying the Proverbs topically. I've got a study that I really enjoy written by Barry Kirchhoff, where what he does essentially is just compiles all the verses, pastes them into a document where you can write your answers underneath of what does this proverb mean. And he gives almost none of his ideas. You just write in. He just puts all the money proverbs together, all of the friendship, all of the anger, all of, and he does that very, very well. That is what my Tuesday morning study has been going through here probably for the last 4 or 5 months. So is the topical study of the book of Proverbs. And if you're interested in that PDF, I can email that to you, or I can even print them out and put them in a spiral if you'd like to do that study on your own, or if you want to start a small group study and you want me to come and help teach that, lead that, I'm going to have a little bit more time once Lynn gets here. I'd love to do that. So that's what I'm here for. So those are a great way to study the book of Proverbs. So these first 9 chapters are these speeches. I'd love to come back and talk some more about some of those later. Chapters 16 through 26, you have a heading at the beginning of chapter 16 that these are the proverb, the beginning of chapter 10, that these are the Proverbs of Solomon. So you have a collection of Solomon's Proverbs, chapters 10 through 15. Then, and again, it keeps going all the way through chapter 22 through 16. I'm not sure the break that's supposed to be there. In chapter 22 through chapter 4, you just have Proverbs of the wise. Chapters 25 through 29, more Proverbs of Solomon. And then those last 2 chapters, it was on the screen. Chapter 30 are the words of Agur, and then chapter 31 are words of King Lemuel, and he talks about he's the Agur is the model reader of the book of Proverbs, and King Lemuel talks about the worthy woman. So the notes want us to just go through chapter 1. Let's see, we got 25-ish minutes or 20 minutes or so. We can look through chapter 1. I would say that chapter 7 is one of my favorite chapters in Proverbs. It's the king, or the guy who is speaking, happens to look outside his window one night, and he sees a young man walking down the street. And he walks down through the bad part of town where he knows where her house is. And when he walks close to her house, she grabs him, kisses him, and says, "I've been waiting for you specifically. I've already paid my fee to the temple so that we can do this guilt-free. My husband's gone away. He took a bag of money, meaning he's not coming back for a long time. I've got my bed all ready for us." And she takes him and goes into her house with him. And he doesn't know that it's going to cost him his life. It's like an arrow to the liver. He is fully entrapped. And you go back and think, when could he have said no? All the way up to this point. But the longer he goes towards that sin, the less likely he is to escape from it. Like the way that Proverbs chapter 7 tells this story is incredible, and there's so many application, far more than just sexual temptation, but that's the way that all temptation goes for us, that God gives us escapes. But if you pass enough exits, you may not have actually committed the sin yet, but at that point, you've already passed all the exits, and you're bound for that no matter what. At what point did this guy, could he have escaped? I don't know. But at some point, he was hook, line, and sinker. He was caught and done for. Chapter 7 is an amazing chapter. Chapter 6, in that you have the 6 things that the Lord hates. Even 7 of them are an abomination to them. I actually want to look at those 4 verses real quick. So Proverbs chapter 6, 16 through 19. I want you to notice the body parts. I don't know if you've ever noticed the body parts in this and the way that this is organized. I find it fascinating. Where do we get to? Someone want to read that? Emily?
How many verses?
16 through 19.
There are 6 things that the Lord hates, even 7 things that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift to run to evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who spreads discord among family members.
All right. It's really interesting that these are here. How many body parts do you see? So in 17 you have eyes, tongue, hands, and then heart and feet. And then verse 19, he goes back to, he doesn't say it specifically, but how do you lie on the witness stand? With your tongue. And how do you stir up trouble among brethren? With your tongue. There's no wonder why James says the tongue is a devilish thing. It's very difficult to control, but you've got to. Like it is when you can't control your tongue, can't have self-control in all of these ways, that there is significant danger ahead. These are the things that God hates. Again, what are we learning from these proverbs? Isn't just general rules for life. These are God's general rules for life. And here you have instruction of things that God hates. So stay away from these things. So I think we should spend the rest of our time in Proverbs chapter 1. So let's go back. I want to start, let's read verses 1 through 7. Tommy, you want to do those? Go ahead.
The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, to learn wisdom and moral instruction, and to discern wise counsel, to receive moral instruction and skillful living in righteousness, justice, and equity, to impart shrewdness to the morally naive, and a discerning plan to the young person. Let the wise also hear and gain instruction, and let the discerning acquire guidance. To discern the meaning of a proverb and a parable, the saying of the wise and their riddles. Fearing the Lord is the beginning of moral knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction.
All right. So here you have the Proverbs of Solomon in verse 1, and then he tells you the purpose of Proverbs. What are the purposes of Proverbs in verses 2 and 3? Wisdom, discipline, for understanding insightful sayings. Like, that's going to be the whole book, is insightful sayings, Proverbs. These aren't things you just read over and you just read through as quickly as you can just to make a check mark on your, daily Bible reading. I read chapter 28. Like, okay, great. But each one of these proverbs are something to chew on. There's something to meditate on and to really see what is the meaning behind each one of these sayings, because there's wisdom in them. For receiving prudent instruction in different categories: righteousness, justice, integrity. And then who benefits from studying Proverbs in verse 4 and 5?
Those who are wise.
Those who are wise in verse 5. Who else? The young people at the end of verse 4. The inexperienced people. Who could benefit from Proverbs? Everybody, right? But who really needs the wisdom of Proverbs? The people without wisdom. It's almost the more wisdom you have, the more you understand how much you need God's wisdom. Yes, it's a growth process for sure. Well put. So he goes into verse 8. Verse 8 through 19.
Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. They will be a garland to grace your head and a chain to adorn your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not give in to them. If they say, come along with us, let's lie in wait for someone's blood. Let's waylay some harmless soul. Let's swallow them alive like the grave, and whole like those who go down to the pit. We will get all sorts of valuable things and fill our houses with plunder. Throw in your lot with us, and we will share a common purse. My son, do not go along with them. Do not set foot on their paths, and their feet rush into sin. For their feet rush into sin. They are swift to shed blood. How useless to spread a net in full view of all the birds. These men lie and wait for their own blood. They waylay only themselves. Such is the end of all who go after ill-gotten gain. It takes away the lives of those who get it.
All right, man, I could talk about this section a long time. So right here at the beginning, listen to who? In verse 8? Your father and father and your mother. Listen to your parents. Why? Verse 9? Or what? Well, it really gets into that in chapter 4, verses 1 through 4. Why should you listen to your parents? Because they have more wisdom than you do. They've been around longer. They're smarter than you are. Listen to them. And if you do listen to their instructions and their teaching, what will those instructions and teaching be for you in verse 9?
Great value will be in your heart and mind because it will be allowed.
Yeah, what is a garland? That's the term in mind. They will be a garland of favor on your head and pendants around your neck. Yeah, like it's like a wreath that they put around your neck. Who would they give that to? It's the people who win a race. Like it is a source of pride for you. Like if you follow your parents in teaching, you're going to be someone who can be proud of the way that you're living in a good way of pride, not in the bad way. You're going to have a life that's worth living. They will be a pride, something that you can be proud of, that you are doing what your parents instructed you to do. Now, on the opposite hand, some other people are going to give you advice. Who is that in verse 10? Sinners. And then he's going to quote the gang leader of the sinners. So, what is the gang leader going to try to tempt you to do and entice you to do? What is the temptation? Yeah, let us set an ambush and kill someone. Are they being specific in who they want to kill? No, they just want to kill someone. Let's attack some innocent person. My translation says, just for fun. What's the appeal in that? It's the thrill of being the bad boy. The thrill of exhilaration of doing something you're not supposed to do. When you take someone else's life, you have a rush of power. That you have control over the life of someone else. You're more powerful than they were. Let's do this just for fun. Let's swallow them alive like Sheol whole, like those who go down to the pit. And what's another reason why the gang leader says that you should follow them in verse 13?
Get money or whatever.
Yeah, we'll kill the guy and take his stuff, so you get rich, so you get power, you get exhilaration, you get stuff, and then verse 14.
No, but he wants to put it all in one pot. That should be a warning.
Yeah.
You know,
What do you get? Why join gangs? Why do people join gangs?
Because they split whatever loot they get, they split it.
Sometimes.
They divide it.
What's the appeal of a gang?
Be part of something.
To be part of something. That's verse 14. Come and be part of our family. A lot of times, kids that don't have dads, kids from broken homes, gangs have an appeal because come be part of a family. That should be the appeal of the church. But that's part of the message that we have to get out, that we have a family atmosphere that actually does love and care about you. Verse 14, throw in your lot with us and we'll share the loot. But the advice of the dad, don't travel the road with them, set foot in their path, because their feet run toward evil and they hurry to shed blood. In verse 17, here, it seems kind of weird to throw this in. If you're going to set a trap for a bird, don't do it where the bird can see you. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for telling me. Why is this verse in here?
For the simple-minded.
Yeah. If you're going to set a trap, don't do it where the birds can see you. What he's going to call the next thing is an idiot trap. They have set a trap for themselves. And who's going to fall in the trap?
Themselves.
They are. They have set their own idiot trap. That they've set an ambush to kill themselves. They attack their own lives. Such are the paths of all who make profit dishonestly. It takes the lives of those who receive it. Is there general truth to this? That you do bad things, that it's going to catch up with you, and there's a good chance your life is going to end prematurely. You join the gang, you run around with the wrong kids in high school, like that it's going to turn out poorly for you, choosing the wrong friends. The general truth is, yeah, you're likely not to come out of that unscathed and have the type of life you want on the other end. Don't choose your friends carefully. These people are idiots. They've set idiot traps for themselves, and it's going to lead to their own destruction. So don't be part of them. On the contrast, you have the gang leader who's calling out to you with all of these appeals. Who's calling out to you in the next verse? In verse 20.
Wisdom.
Wisdom. Wisdom is personified as a woman. And she's crying out in the streets, making her voice heard in the public squares. What does that mean? Is she hiding?
Well, no, she's out amongst everybody.
Yeah, she's where everybody can find her. And not only that, verse 21, she's not only crying out, what is she doing? She speaks, she cries out above the commotion, is what my translation says. She's speaking louder than everyone else. And what is her message? How long, inexperienced ones, will you love ignorance? How long will you mockers enjoy mocking and you fools hate knowledge? If you respond to my warning, then I will pour my spirit on you and teach you my words. Since I called out to you and you refused, extended my hand and no one paid attention, since you neglected all my counsel and did not accept my direction, I in turn will laugh at your calamity. Where is wisdom? She's crying out in the streets, come and listen to me. Anybody, there's a warning, danger ahead. She's yelling out louder than anyone. This is what your parents taught you. This is what your teachers taught you. This is what, the smart people are saying. Don't go with this crowd. Don't go with that crowd. Focus on gaining wisdom. But what did the inexperienced ones love? They loved ignorance. The mockers enjoyed mocking, and they hate knowledge, and they ignored wisdom. And if you ignore wisdom long enough, calamity is going to come upon you. And what is wisdom going to do for you then?
Actually, verse 22 talks, she actually calls them very simple, or how long are you going to be stupid?
Yeah.
That's basically what she said. How long?
Yeah. But if you're stupid long enough, calamity is going to come on you. And what will wisdom do for you then? When calamity happens, in verse 26, will laugh at you and mock you. What does it mean, mock you? Make fun of you. Have you ever heard of Florida Man? You know how Florida Man is always doing something crazy. It's a news headline. There's a lot of people who have been Florida Man. Florida Man robs a Wendy's with an alligator. Or Florida Man dies by doing something stupid. There's always a man in Florida doing something crazy that makes headlines. And it's always just says Florida Man does this stupid thing. And there are so many of those because... And what does the rest of the world do to the guy? They laugh at him and they make fun of him because he did something stupid. You stay stupid long enough, you ignore wisdom long enough, you will be laughed at and when terror strikes you. And how will terror strike you? Verse 27, like a storm, and your calamity will come like a whirlwind. When trouble and stress overcome you, they will call to me, but I won't answer. They will search for me, but won't find me, because they hated knowledge, didn't choose to fear the Lord, were not interested in my counsel, and rejected all my correction. That's Proverbs chapter 1. And that's just the way the book reads in the study. So I hope tonight is helpful just for you to understand what Proverbs is all about, and maybe you give a desire to study the book of Proverbs. It is worthwhile. So if you're interested in doing a study through Proverbs, there's a lot of great material out there, and if you want one of those,